Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryashu Sarvada Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. On behalf of Param Vedanta, warm welcome to the 69th session of GIFT, Gita for Inner Freedom and Transformation. We continue with the 12th chapter today, Bhakti Yoga. We learn about the different bhaktas and the incremental stages our bhakti goes through. The moderator for the day is Dr. Anupama. Our pranams to her and the other speakers of the day, Dr. Sandhya, Dr. Vasumati, and Dr. Hegde. Over to you, ma'am.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. As Neeta just announced, we are doing Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, verses 11 to 15. As an introduction to these verses, let's start from the very beginning. This chapter is called Bhakti Yoga. So, what is bhakti? Bhakti could either mean devotion, reverence, or love directed towards a higher principle like a god or guru. Or it could be a course of discipline to achieve a spiritual goal when it is called Bhakti Yoga. So, based on one's motive, a bhakta is called an artha bhakta. This person is a sakama, a jnani bhakta who remembers God only in moments of distress. Then we have the artharthi bhakta who needs God as a means for materialistic ends. He is also a sakama, a jnani bhakta. The third is a jignasu bhakta, also an ajnani, but he's a nishkama, not sakama bhakta. He's free from materialistic desires and has an intense desire for moksha. We finally have the most exalted jnani bhakta, who is an absolutely motiveless bhakta and he has nothing to accomplish. In the words of Krishna, Naiva tasya kritena artaha, na akritena iha kaschana, nacha asya sarva bhuteshu kaschid arthavyapashrayaha. A jnani has nothing to gain through action, nothing to lose due to inaction, and he depends on nobody for anything. So, the purpose of these verses is to help us transform from sakama to nishkama bhakti, because sakama bhakti is a rajasa bhakti. There is spiritual stagnation, although there may be material gains, whereas nishkama bhakti is sattvika bhakti accompanied by spiritual growth. The path is from Preya to Shreya. So nishkama bhakti, Krishna says, should become our lifestyle. Yat karoshi, yadashnashi, yajjuhoshi dadasiyat, yat tapasyasi kaunteya, tat kurushva madarpana. This means dedicate every action to me. Whatever you eat, whatever ritual, charity, austerity you perform, just dedicate it to me. Let every action be offered at the feet of the Lord. And what do the feet of the Lord represent? This entire creation within the network of the laws of creation. Every action is now Ishvara Arpana. Consequently, every karma phalam is Ishvara Prasada. A Nishkama Bhakta is a karma yogi, and his actions are karma yoga, attitude, Nishkama Bhakti. Very, very important is this concept. It is this transformation which is a consequence of an integration of sadhana and bhakti. Just sadhana or just bhakti doesn't make a difference. When they are integrated, it becomes wholesome. In the words of Sri Rajagopalachari, so beautifully said, the path of bhakti is not different from that of jnana. When intelligence matures and lodges securely in the mind, it becomes wisdom. When wisdom is integrated with life and issues out in action, it becomes bhakti. Knowledge, when fully mature, is bhakti. If it does not get transformed into bhakti, such knowledge is useless tinsel. To believe that jnana and bhakti, knowledge and devotion, are different from each other is ignorance. If Adi Shankaracharya himself, who drank the ocean of jnana as easily as one sips water from the palm of one's hand, sang in his later years hymns to develop devotion, it is enough to show that jnana and bhakti are one and the same. So let us now trace the evolution of bhakti from the highest order to the lowest, as Krishna does here. Starting with nirguna Ishvara bhakti, which is the highest form of bhakti. This is jnana yoga. Through shravana manana nididhyasana, one becomes a jnana nishta and achieves moksha. Jnana yoga is here called aksharopasana. The highest bhakta is here described as an abheda or advaita jnani, a sthita prajna, a parabhakta or paramahamsa, one who knows aham saha, saha aham. And what are the features of this parabhakta? Adveshta sarvabhutanam, maitraha karuna evacha, nirmamo nirahankara, samadukha sukha kshami. Let's just trace a few of these words and its meanings. Maitraha means this jnani is a friend of all. He has karunaha, he's compassionate. Nirmamaha, he's without port, possessions, obligations, transactions, and relationships. Nirahankara, he has no identification with body-mind complex. Samadukha sukhaha, he's equanimous. Kshami means titiksha. Santushta, he's contented. When? Satatam, always. Drida nischaya, he's a sthira prajna. Mai arpita mano buddhi, his mind and intellect are fixed on me. Harsha marsha bhaya udvega muktaha, he's free from elation, envy, fear, anxiety. Although we know that jnanat eva kaivalyam, it is not easy. As we've seen in Kathopanishad, kshrasya dhara nishita duratyaya durgam pataha tat kavayo vadanti. Krishna has also said, kleshaha adhikataraha tesham avyakta asakta chetasam avyakta hi gati dukkam dehavadbhi avapyate. So it is only one who understands himself to be formless that can understand Bhagavan is also formless. We all have a form, but we must know we are not that form. The path of nirguna dhyanam is difficult because of our deha abhimana, ahankara, and mamakara. It's like walking on a razor's edge. The two major problems being here God cannot be objectified and the yogi has to be a sadhana chatushtaya sampanna. So if nirguna bhakti is difficult, Krishna says just step down from paramarthika to vyavaharika prapancha. After all, the vyavaharika prapancha is always available as a safety net. Krishna says, Yetu sarvani karmani mai sanyasya matparaha ananyenaiva yogena mam dhyayanta upasate. Step down to the fourth rung, from nirguna to saguna Ishvara, and meditate upon me with undivided attention. After all, the Lord is here as the entire universe, the Vishwarupa Ishvara, the Virat Ishvara, Jagata Ishadi, Yukta Sevanam, Ashtamurti Drika, Deva Pujanam. But if ahankara, mamakara are overwhelming, and if the mind is not rarefied enough to see Vishwarupa Ishvara, no problem, Krishna says, just descend to the third rung, Eka Rupa Saguna Ishvara Bhakti. This is Ishta Devata Upasana, which is here called Abhyasa Yoga. But again, if we are too extroverted to meditate in stillness, And if we are Rajoguna Pradhana, again, there should be no problem. Just step down to the second rung of bhakti. Let every karma be nishkama karma, like Pancha Mahayajnas, all the while bhavana being Ishvara Arpana Bhava. But few of us are very tamasic. For this predominantly tamasic nature, often accompaniments are ragas, dveshas, and all. Nishkama karmani cannot be prioritized because sakama karmas are so many to be fulfilled. Krishna says, fulfill all legitimate personal desires, step down to the lowest rung, the sakama karma one, but develop the bhavana of prasada buddhi. Here in the verse 11, he says, Ataha etad api ashaktaha asi kartum madhyogam ashritaha sarva karma palatyagam tatu kuru yatatmavan. Sakama karma, selfish activity, is acceptable if done with the attitude of prasada buddhi. So, whatever be the nature of the karma, absolutely selfish kamya karmas, or sometimes inevitable nishitta karmas, which are called sunas. For example, when we use bhak sprays, inadvertently, many other creatures could be destroyed, or while cooking, parasites could be destroyed without intention. The key words here are sarva karma palatyaga. Tatakuru yatatmavan. This means although every karma is done with selfish intentions to achieve materialistic ends, just dedicate them to the Lord and accept the benefits as Ishvara Prasada. By developing this attitude of gratitude, we gradually ascend the ladder of bhakti. But what if even this first rung feels impossible? Swamiji says, hope for better luck next birth. However, let's conclude in this verse 11, Krishna is saying, be a non-spiritual, be a properly materialistic person, use religion for finite worldly benefits. It's okay to start with, but do not adopt immoral, unrighteous means. Accept all benefits as Ishvara Prasada, because it is this association with the Lord that will gradually induce sattvic desires and help us become mumukshu bhaktas. Krishna then proceeds to grade the four sadhanas of Bhakti Yoga in a slightly different way. He says, Shreyo hi jnanam abhyasat, jnanat dhyanam vishishyate, dhyanat karma palatyaga, tyagat shanti anantaram. Here, abhyasa means Ishvara Chintanam. That means meditation upon God without knowledge of Shastras. Jnanam means scriptural knowledge without the practice of meditation. Dhyanam is a combination of the above two, that is, meditation with knowledge. And Krishna surprisingly says the most superior sadhana is karma palatyaga. That means sakama karma pradhana karma yoga of the previous chart, apparently contradictory. If we see the first chart, Nirguna Brahma Upasana was the uppermost, followed by Vishwarupa, Ekarupa Ishvara Upasana, Nishkama Karma, and finally Sakama Karma with Sarva Karma Palatyaga. But among the sadhanas just prescribed, we see this has been hoisted right to the top, Sakama Karmas with Sarva Karma Palatyaga, followed by Dhyanam, Jnanam, and Abhyasa. We may wonder how this Sakama Karma Phalam, which occupied the lowest rung of Bhakti Yoga, is suddenly here as the the most superior sadhana. We should understand Krishna is glorifying Sarva Karma Palathyagam, and in this context, it is called Atisyokti. This is a Stuti Vakyam and not a Pramana Vakyam. It is an exaggeration for encouragement. It is not an unusual practice. In statistics, we have heard of the terms mean, median, and mode. Mean being the average, median being the middle number, and mode is that value which occurs most often. So take the example of frequency of shoe sizes. In this chart, we see that the shoe size 7 is most often used, and it is the mode. See, although size 9 belongs to this very elegant person whom we would like to emulate, and size 5 is small and infrequent, size 7 is the most common size and therefore in greatest demand. An intelligent businessman would therefore give top priority to develop this size, which is in maximum demand. This is not different here. Jnanis, we see, are very rare, and sadhana chatushtaya sampannas are very few. But sakama karmis are a majority like us. Is it not rational for Jagat Guru Sri Krishna to prioritize the sakama karmis to drive home the importance of sarva karma palatyaga? Since a majority of us belong to this lowest rung of bhakti ladder, the sakama karmis, Krishna has here highlighted this sadhana needed to uplift the majority of us. Remember, sakama pradhana karma yoga will not directly give shantih or freedom from samsara. It initiates us into this bhakti marga, which culminates in moksha. So our goal should be to become parabhaktas, a paramahamsa. To realize distance between me and Lord is only notional. There should be no doubt that an Advaita jnani bhakta is the greatest bhakta. After all, Krishna himself has said, jnani tu atmaiva me matam. Thank you. Dr. Sandhya will now take over and explain verse 13 to us. Over to you, madam.
Thank you, Dr. Anupama. So the first half of this 12th chapter condensed the sadhanas leading to the parabhakta state. We've just heard the wonderful summary of that. And this 13th verse marks the beginning of the second part that describes the characteristics of the parabhakta or the parabhakta lakshanani. Chanting the verse, Advaita sarva bhutanam maitra karuna evacha nirmamo nirahankaraha samadukka sukhakshami. My devotee is a non-hater of all beings. Advaita sarva bhutana. Maitra karuna evacha. He's friendly and compassionate, free from mind notion and free from I notion. Nirmamaha nirahankara. He's the same in comfort as well as in discomfort and forbearing. Samadukka sukha kshami. Next slide, sir. So that is what we see here. These are the lakshanani of a jivan mukti or a parabhakta. Next slide. A person going through the 5 stages of Bhakti Yoga, we have just seen the Sakama Nishkama Karma, the Ishta Devata Vishwarupa Upasana, and the Nirguna Ishvara Upasana, becomes an Abheda Jnani. That means one who has conviction about Advaita Jnana. Sri Adi Shankara in his Bhashyam says that the first four stages together constitute Karma Yoga, because karma is involved in all these 4 stages. And there is Bheda Bhava too. We see God as distinct from us in each of these stages. The 5th stage is the Aksharopasa Jnana Yoga, and it is distinct from the rest. One promotes, the first Karma Yoga part promotes the Dasoham Bhavana. The Dvaitam is there. And the other is the Soham Bhavana. So for a Karma Yogi, Advaita Darshanam is not possible, just as Dr. Anupama beautifully explained. And for an Advaitin, Karma Yoga is not relevant. So even as a Grihastha Jnani, if we do the Panchamaha Yajna, it is with the attitude of Akarta, Abhokta, and not seeking moksha through the sadhana, because I know that moksha is a Siddha Swarupam of mine, and it is not a sadhyam. It is not something that I want to claim. I can claim this all the time. And therefore, the one who is in Nididhyasanam puts on actually a Vesha, the Ahankara Vesha, and does these pujas. And he will never ask for moksha from the Bhagavan. Shankaracharya uses a special expression with regard to this moksha and this person. He says is swatantraha. It means he doesn't depend on God's mercy for him to get moksha. Krishna chooses to describe the Lakshanani of this Abheda Jnani, also known as Parabhakta, also known as Aksharopasaka, also known as Sthira Prajna. And why does he do this? Probably as an incentive to follow the sadhana, so that we can follow deliberately and cultivate these virtues. And Swami Dayananda Saraswati beautifully says, what is deliberate for a seeker becomes spontaneous for a jnani. Next slide, sir. So looking at the virtues which are described in this verse, adveshta sarva bhutana, no hatred towards anyone, because everyone is intrinsically Shuddha, Buddha, Mukta. Sometimes we may be irritated by the actions or character of somebody because they are corrupt or immoral, but the Shastras say that never justifies hatred. And every person is innately good. Even if misbehavior demands some appropriate action, it may be in the form of samadhana, bheda, danda even, but it must be done with love, just like a mother admonishes a child, and there should be no hatred. In his Bhashyam, Adi Shankara says, no hatred even to those who trouble us. It's easy to say we have no hatred to someone who we like or who gives us joy, but even somebody who troubles us constantly, how is it possible not to hate them? It's only by Atmano Dukkha Hetumapi Na Kinchit Dveshti, is what the Bhashyam says. It is only by Sarvani Bhutani Atmatvenahi Pashyati. Only if we see everyone as ourselves is this possible. It's a Vishwarupa Darshanam of sorts. For example, when we accidentally bite our tongue, we don't knock off our teeth. We just accept it and move on. The second quality that is described in this verse is Maitraha. A jnani is a friend to all, a universal friend. And Swami Paramatmananda ji quotes from Niti Shatakam of Bhartahari, a verse which describes the qualities of a true friend. He should guide and direct one to stay on the righteous path and turn away from wrong actions. Should be a confidant, should share the virtues with others, and we should be there all the time in adversity and crisis. And these are the marks of the Sanmitra Lakshanani of a Maitraha. Then the third quality that is described is Karunaha. That's the next virtue. Person is compassionate, spontaneously extending a helping hand, which is a godly virtue. And the Bhashyam adds, Sarva Bhuta Abhaya Prada, not harming anyone through thought, word, or deed. It's called Ahimsa Vratam. Apparently, the sannyasis have to take this Vratam and not hurt anybody. And sannyasa is not just merely an outward appearance, it is a renunciation, an inward attitude. Then we come to the next two qualities, that is nirmamaha, free from mama thought or action or notion, that is asanga sambandha rahita, no ownership. And how is this possible? As Swami Paramatmananda always says, it's through practicing port, reducing our possessions, obligations, relationships, and transactions. And only then can we avoid preoccupation with our lives. Because every opportunity we have, we should, especially as people on the spiritual path, practice this port reduction. We must remember at every given instance that whatever we have is a temporary gift and we are ready to give it up. Jokingly says, we have to say, I am only a user and ready to be a loser. Nirankara, the freedom from I notion. There are 5 anatmas that are a millstone. There are millstones around our neck for spiritual progress. 3 of them are external, the possession, profession, family, and 2 are internal. They are the intimate ones which are responsible for our ahankara, that is the body and the mind. And as we progress spiritually, even though we have to eliminate the mind and I thought, we know that. We constantly are hearing that, reading about it. But we need to keep them for the sake of transactions only. Even a jnani has to use them only for transactions. But how do we know? We are working on it. All of us are working on it. How do we know that ahankara and mamakara are done away with? It's only when we have the lakshanam of the samadukka sukha. That is the lakshanam we must cultivate. The equipoise that we show when we are faced with life's ups and downs, remaining calm throughout all painful and pleasurable events without raga dvesha. The last quality described in this verse is kshami. A kshamavan is has the quality of titiksha or fortitude through emotional disturbances. So even when we are rebuked, even we are hit physically, maybe even, then we remain unprovoked, undisturbed. And again, practically, how is this possible? All of us react. It's so easy to react. We may have to resort to anger to get certain things done. But Swamiji says it should not have a hangover effect. So the FIR principle is probably something which we have to use constantly. Then coming to conclude, the Anvaya is Aksharopasaka Sarva Bhutana Adveshta Maitra Karuna Eva Nirmama Nirankara Samadukka Sugakshami Cha Bhavati. My devotee, the parabhakta, is a non-hater of all beings, is friendly, compassionate, free from mind and eye notion, same in comfort and discomfort, and has forbearance. Hari Om. Thank you.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. The verse number 14 goes like this. Santushtaha satatam yogi yatatma drudanischayah mayyarpito mano buddhiryo madbhaktaha sa me priyaha. Tatparya, that devotee of mine whose mind and intellect are fixed upon me and who is ever contented, tranquil, self-restrained and with clear knowledge is dear to me. Next slide, sir. In the second part of the 12th chapter, beginning from the 13th verse, Lord Krishna talks about the characteristics of the highest bhakta. The highest bhakta being one who has gone through all the 5 levels of Bhakti Yoga as we have seen in the previous presentations. And the final level of Bhakti Yoga being nothing but Jnana Yoga. And therefore, the one who has successfully gone through all the 5 levels of Bhakti Yoga will necessarily be a jnani, who was called as Sthira Prajna in the 2nd chapter. And if you want to call him the greatest bhakta, we can also call him parabhakta or sthira bhakta, which are synonymous. And what are the characteristics of such a sthira prajnaha? This is the topic we are seeing now. The previous verse, explained by Dr. Sandhya, covered a few characteristics. And now we are seeing in the 14th verse, in which Krishna said, Satatam Santushtaha. Santushtaha, the one who has discovered fullness and who does not lack anything in life. And this inner Purnatvam is called Santoshaha. And the person who has got this is Santushtaha. We recall the Sthita Prajna portion of 2nd chapter. Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanyeva atmana tushtaha Sthita Prajnasto uchyate. The one who is contented. And why is he contented? Because he has got the knowledge. Aham purnaha, purnatva jnanena. When is he santushtaha? It's not a transient contentment we are talking about. Satatam santushtaha, eternal contentment. Here, yogaha means mokshaha or gnanam. So, yogi means the one who has got gnanam. Gnanam is called yogaha because through knowledge alone, the distance between Jivatma and Paramatma is removed. Since the distance between Jivatma and Paramatma is caused by only ignorance. This bhakta, who is a jnani, has understood that I am not different from Purna Ishvara. If the Lord is Purna, the infinite one, that Purna Ishvara cannot be away from me. The ultimate knowledge is Purna Ishvara, is not away from me. Purna Ishvara is not different from me. Purna means Satyam, Anandam, Anantam. And when I discover the fact that I am Purnaha, I don't lack anything in life. Such a jnani is involved in activities, perhaps is more busy than a samsari. But the difference is the activities do not come from a wanting mind, an incomplete mind. Therefore, jnani's activities are called leela. Ajnani's activities are more of a struggle. Next slide, sir. Now the next word, yatatma. Atma in this context means body, mind, sense, organ complex. Stula, sukshma, sharira, dvayam. All these 3 put together is called Atma here, not the Sachidananda Atma. Yataha means regulator, well managed. Yatatma means that person who has learned to manage or handle his own body, mind, sense complex. That means he knows how to use them as his own instruments. He is not enslaved by the jnanendriyas or karmendriyas. Self-discipline is indicated by etatatvam. And because of this self-discipline only, dridhanishchayaha, he has been able to attain self-knowledge. Dridhanishchayaha means stirapragnaha. That means the one who has got knowledge with conviction. And that is why we have got two processes of Vedantic study. The first process is you listen to the entire Vedantic teaching systematically for some time without raising any question, which is called Shravanam. Even if you get some doubts in the middle, you don't ask doubts, you keep them aside. And generally you find as you listen more and more, the doubts get cleared. For a length of time, you do Shravanam, giving the benefit of doubt to the teacher and the teaching. Whatever doubts you get, you keep it aside. And once you complete the comprehensive listening, generally much of the doubts don't remain. But if they're still there, you start the second process called Mananam, where you eliminate your doubts. And only when the doubts are removed, which are problems at the intellectual level, until I'm convinced, I have to keep raising questions and answers. When I do Shravanam and Mananam, I will get conviction, which is called Dridhanishchayaha. From this, it's very clear the greatest bhakta must have clear Vedantic knowledge. Krishna himself tells it very clearly. Without Vedantic knowledge, you will be a bhakta, no doubt, but there will always be a distance between the Lord and the bhakta. Bhakti can reach its culmination only when the Vedantic study is done and assimilated. Therefore, Dridhanishchayaha. And the next characteristic of this parabhakta is mayarpito mano buddhi. Our appreciation of the Lord takes place at three levels, as we have heard earlier. Initially, God is Ekarupa Ishvara, as a person who is the creator of the world, and I place him in Vaikunta, Kailasha, heaven, or some place called Ishtadevata Ishvaraha. Then there's further elevation. I learned to look upon God not only as the creator, but the Lord is one who is the very cause which has manifested in the form of the universe. And therefore, Vishwarupa Ishvaraha is the next level. And the final is, as we know, Arupa Ishvaraha. That is, the Lord does not become the world. The Lord appears as the world. And the most important point that you should note here is the higher levels of bhakti do not displace or destroy the lower levels. That means one has not understood Vedanta if it destroys the lower levels. So a jnani who appreciates the formless God, he can still continue to have devotion to the God with form also. At emotional level, Ishtadevata will be useful. At intellectual level, God as Brahman. And therefore, Krishna says, Mayarpito mano buddhihi, the one whose emotional personality and the one whose rational intellect, questioning intellect, both of them are at the feet of the Lord. And therefore, Mayarpito mano buddhihi yat mad bhaktaha. And such a devotee who has appreciation of Ekarupa and Anekarupa and Arupa Ishvaraha, that person is dearest to me. In fact, dearest is not the word. He is me. Always remembering the 7th chapter, Gnani tu Atmaiva me matam. Thank you, sir. Hari Om.
Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. We are now in the 15th verse of the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and we have seen various forms of bhakti classification. One classification is the way I see God. Is God the means, or is God my goal, or is God myself? Based on this understanding, the intensity for God becomes manda when God is the means, madhyama when God is the goal, and uttama when God is myself, because all of us love ourselves the most. Now, bhakti can also be classified in the way I see God in one form that is called ekarupa. Even more evolved form is anekarupa, when I'm able to see this whole world as an expression of God. And finally, to be able to experience my sarvam idam prottam sutre manigana eva, to see the formless God in and through everything, including myself. Bhakti can also be classified through sadhana. That means through karma yoga also you see bhakti, through upasana you see bhakti, through jnana you see bhakti. in this part of the 12th chapter, you are seeing bhakti in a new classification, which is called what is para and apara bhakti. Apara bhakti is also called sadhana bhakti. That means God is there as a goal, and through various sadhanas, I'm trying to attain to it. A parabhakta is the highest bhakta. A parabhakta is also called a jnani bhakta, for whom the sadhyam, the goal, has been attained, and therefore such a person is called a siddha. Shri Krishna repeatedly says in the Bhagavad Gita and else that how a jnani is a highest form of a bhakta. Now, here is a person whose devotion is the highest because his journey is over. Will an enlightened person pray? He does not need anything at all, and yet he prays, and his prayer is only an expression of joy, an expression of gratitude. And what is the nature of an enlightened person? His ability to be able to see divinity in himself, divinity in the world around. Now we are in the season of Shivaratri. The most beautiful word is auspiciousness. Word Shiva means auspiciousness. To be able to see auspiciousness in myself, to be able to see auspiciousness in everything and everybody around, to see Lord Shiva everywhere is what is called parabhakti. Swami Chinmayananda has something very nice to say about love. He says, when love or bhakti increases, the distance between the two decreases. Whenever we say, I love somebody intensely, or when we love someone intensely, we say he or she is very close to me. And therefore, the greatest love is when the distance between the lover and the beloved is zero. That means a jnani is not close to Bhagavan. A jnani is inseparable from Bhagavan. In all these verses 13, 14 until 20, we will see how such a bhakta, who is the highest form of a bhakta, is able to face difficult situations in life. How a person is able to respond to various problems in life. So this is called a parabhakti lakshanani. And what is the purpose of studying all these 13, 14, 16? Now, if you understand the benefit of this knowledge, then we will be motivated to become like a jnani. And once we are able to give some value for these virtues, then these virtues become a certain benchmark to see where do I stand in relation to a parabhakta. In all our previous classes, and of course very nicely brought out again this time by Dr. Anupama, is that there are 5 levels of bhakti. 2 levels from karma yoga, that is sakama and nishkama. 2 levels from upasana, where you have ekarupa and vishwarupa upasana. And then the highest is nirguna brahma upasana, where a person becomes one with Bhagavan, a person attains to moksha. Let us chant this verse, verse 15. Yasmano dvijati loko lokano dvijati chayah harsham harshabhayoge vai muktoryat sacha me priyaha. Now, what is Krishna trying to say in this beautiful verse? Now, this verse is quoted many times because this is the attitude of a parabhakta. A parabhakta is so internally strong, he is rock-like when he comes to being a bhokta. That means when unpleasant experiences come to him, he is like a rock. He is unaffected by all the unpleasantness in the world. At the same time, how does he relate to other people? He's extremely soft, like a flower. So, loka na udvijate. That means he is not disturbed by the world. At the same time, he does not disturb the world at all. And what are the qualities he has? Harsha, amarsha. That means mukta hai. He's free from elation. He's free from envy, bhaya, no fear, and udvega, who has no anxiety. Now, again, I have told you what is the purpose of learning all these qualities. once we know that it is possible to live in this world and not to be affected by the adverse things, that means a person has so much of internal strength, either he has titiksha or he sees this world as mithya. And in a drama, even though you're going through very painful experience, you're able to dramatize, but internally you're not affected because you know it is all a drama. And that is how a jnani sees. But a jnani is so caring for the others who take this world seriously. Although he knows that the world has not come to an end when a small child is crying that the balloon has burst, but then he comes down to the level of a small child and is able to emote with the small child and say, and to feel the sadness of the child whenever it comes to being sensitive to others. And that is what this beautiful verse always, the characteristics that we need to be able to emulate. So one day when we become a Jivan Bhukta, these become our natural traits. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Thank you, Dr. Anupama, and all the speakers. Param Vedanta thanks its listeners. Whatever be the nature of our action, we must fix our mind on God. Everything we do all the time. We must from Ekarupa to Arupa, from Aparabhakti to Parabhakti, from Sakama Bhaktya to Nishkama Bhakta, from Manda to Uttama. Reduce the distance between God and me till I realize that distance is only notional. We meet again on the 14th of March for our next session on Atma Bodha, session number 14. We conclude today with prayers. Please chant along. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Namaste.